is these 10 companies. Just 10. They now make up over 40% of the entire S&P 500. Let that sit for a second. When you hit buy on a basic S&P 500 index fund, the thing every financial advisor on the planet tells you is the safe, boring, diversified move. You're not actually buying 500 different bets anymore. You're buying 10, and almost all 10 of them are leaning on the same word to justify their price tag: AI. Now, here's the part that should actually worry you. The last time 10 companies controlled this much of the market, it was the year 2000, right before the dot-com crash wiped out $6 trillion and took the NASDAQ down nearly 80%. So, is this 2000 all over again? Or is it different this time? I spent the last week pulling apart the actual numbers, not the hot takes, the actual numbers. And what I found is more complicated, and honestly more useful, than bubble or not a bubble. Because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what's propping this market up, exactly where the cracks are forming, and exactly what to do with your own money. Regardless of which way this goes, let's get into it. So, let's start with the number I just threw at you because it's wild enough to deserve a full breakdown. The Magnificent Seven: Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, Nvidia, Meta, and Tesla currently make up around a third of the entire S&P 500 on their own. Add 3 more names, and you're at over 40%, sitting in just 10 companies. Their combined value is something like $22 trillion. To put that in perspective, that's bigger than the entire GDP of every country on Earth, except the US and China combined. And here's the comparison that should make you sit up. At the literal peak of the dot-com bubble in 2000, the top 10 companies in the index made up about 27% of it. Today, it's over 40%. We are, by this specific measure, in more concentrated territory than the most infamous bubble in modern market history. Now, I want to be fair here because this isn't a "the sky is falling" video. There's a real argument for why this time is different. The dot-com companies were mostly burning cash with no real business model. Pets.com sold dog food at a loss and called it growth. The Magnificent Seven are the opposite. These are the most profitable companies that have ever existed. Apple alone generates more free cash flow in a year than most countries' entire budgets. So, the bull case is simple. It's not hype. It's earnings. The bear case is also simple. Doesn't matter how good the companies are. If 40% of your diversified index moves as one stock, you don't actually have diversification. You have a concentrated bet, wearing a diversified costume, and that's just the surface. Because underneath the stock prices, there's a financial structure holding this whole thing up that most people investing in index funds have never even heard of. Okay, picture this. You own a lemonade stand. I want to buy lemonade from you, but you don't have any money to buy lemons. So I hand you $1,000, not as payment, as an investment in your stand. You take that $1,000 and use it to buy lemons from me because I also happen to sell lemons. On paper, we both just had a great quarter. I made a sale, you made a sale, except no actual new money entered the system. It just went in a circle, and we both got to put revenue on a spreadsheet. That, in a massively oversimplified nutshell, is what analysts are calling AI's circular financing problem. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's how it actually plays out with real companies. Nvidia invests billions into OpenAI. OpenAI turns around and signs a $300 billion deal with Oracle to build data centers. Oracle then takes that money and spends a huge chunk of it buying, you guessed it, Nvidia chips, to actually build those data centers. The cash leaves Nvidia's balance sheet labeled as investment, travels through 2 other companies, and lands right back at Nvidia, labeled as revenue. Current estimates put the total scale of these circular arrangements somewhere north of $800 billion. That's not a typo. $800 billion, moving in loops between a small handful of the same companies, each one booking it as fresh demand. Now, the optimistic read on this, and a lot of serious analysts hold this view, is that this isn't just an accounting trick. It's just how you build expensive infrastructure, fast. When you need to build something as capital-intensive as AI data centers, locking in your suppliers with investment is a legitimate way to guarantee supply, in a market where the demand for chips outstrips what anyone can produce. But here's the part that's actually concerning. OpenAI, the company sitting at the center of a huge chunk of these deals, is projected to lose around $14 billion this year alone. Not revenue. Loss. Almost triple what they lost the year before. And the entire bet propping up these multi-hundred-billion-dollar infrastructure commitments is that by 2029, that same company will somehow be pulling in $100 billion a year. That's not a small gap to close. That's the kind of gap that, if it doesn't close on schedule, doesn't just hurt one company's stock price, it tightens the whole loop at once. Because everyone in that circle is depending on everyone else in that circle actually having the money they're promising. Here's where it gets a little more uncomfortable, because so far, we've only talked about cash these companies actually have. Now let's talk about the cash they're borrowing. JP Morgan estimates that more than $6 trillion will be needed between now and 2030, just to fund AI data centers, the energy to power them, and the chip supply chain behind them. $6 trillion. And a growing share of that isn't coming out of these companies' own profits anymore. It's debt. A lot of it sitting in what are called off-balance sheet vehicles, which is a fancy way of saying structured so it doesn't show up clean and obvious on the main financial statements investors actually look at. Now, why does that matter to someone who just has a 401k and isn't trading AI stocks directly? Because this is exactly the mechanism that turned the 2008 housing crisis from some banks made bad loans into a massive global financial crisis. It wasn't really the bad mortgages themselves that did the damage. It was that those bad mortgages were chopped up, repackaged, and quietly threaded through the entire banking system in ways nobody could fully see until it was already unwinding. To be clear, I am not saying AI debt is the next 2008. The scale, the players, and the type of debt are genuinely different, and a lot of credible analysts will tell you the classic bubble warning signs: shrinking cash flow, rising default rates, credit markets seizing up, aren't broadly showing up yet. As of right now, this looks less like the music has stopped, and more like early stage of something that could go either way depending on whether the revenue actually shows up. But could go either way is exactly why you don't want to be caught flat-footed. So let's talk about how you actually protect yourself, because that's genuinely what matters here, not predicting the exact day this turns. So, if you've made it this far, you might be expecting me to tell you to sell everything and buy gold bars. I'm not going to do that, because honestly, panic is usually the worst trade in the book. Here's what I'd actually do. And remember, I'm not a financial advisor. This isn't advice, just how I'm personally thinking about it. Firstly, actually check what you own. Most people think a basic S&P 500 fund equals instant diversification. Go look at the top 10 holdings of whatever fund you're in right now. If you're seeing 35 to 40% sitting in the same handful of tech names, you're not as diversified as you think you are. And that's not a guess. That's just math you can check in 2 minutes. Secondly, consider an equal weight option as a balance, not a replacement. Equal weight index funds hold the same 500 companies, but instead of the biggest ones dominating, every company gets roughly the same slice. You're not betting against AI by doing this. You're just making sure your diversified fund actually behaves like one. Thirdly, look outside the US and outside tech. International stocks, value sectors, smaller companies that aren't trading on an AI narrative at all, these don't move in lockstep with whether OpenAI's revenue numbers hit projections. Real diversification means owning things that don't all rise and fall for the same reason. Fourthly, and this one's less about your portfolio and more about your headspace, actually watch the right signals instead of the noise. Ignore the daily headlines screaming bubble or boom. Watch 3 things instead. Are these AI companies' free cash flows still growing or starting to shrink? Is their debt-to-earnings ratio creeping up? Are credit spreads on AI-related debt starting to widen? Those are the actual early warning signs, not a scary headline on a random Tuesday. None of this means avoid the AI trade entirely. These companies have real revenue, real products, and, in a lot of cases, a real moat. This is about not having your entire financial future sitting on the assumption that the story keeps playing out exactly the way it has the last 3 years. Because markets have a long history of punishing people who assumed the good times were the permanent state of things. Here's the honest truth about bubbles. Nobody ever knows for certain they're in one until it's already over. The people who do best aren't the ones who perfectly call the top. They're the ones who built a portfolio that survives being wrong. So, whether this AI build-out turns into the biggest wealth creation story of our generation, or eventually corrects hard, the way every period of extreme concentration eventually has, your move is the same either way. Know what you actually own. Diversify like you mean it. And stop checking your portfolio every time a headline tries to scare you into a decision. I'll keep digging into this one as the next earnings season rolls in. If the debt finance side of this story starts cracking, you'll see it here first. Until then, stay casual, stay invested, and I'll see you in the next one.